Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. This is your Manchester City versus Manchester United derby preview, the Manchester derby. And I think this is going to be an absolutely cracking show because not only are we going to be looking at that, not only are we looking at the opportunity of sinking Man City to their worst start in the Premier League in years, but also we've got some very big topics to talk about on the show tonight. Amorim wanted Watkins over Sesko. Big injury updates around Cunha and Mount, and they ain't good. Also updates around the goalkeeper and the midfield situation. So we'll delve into what was a very interesting interview with Beth and Ben Jacobs at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Check it out. We'll be taking some of the headlines from that. But let's start off with this. Let's start off with the Manchester derby. It's Manchester City against Manchester United. We're back from the international break. We're excited about that. And what bigger game to have than a game against our City rivals at their place. And remember, this is an opportunity. I would say this is, and if you watch That's Football, you'll know, this is the in-crisis derby. This is the backlash derby. Whoever loses this game will get the backlash from the media and the pile-on from their fans. Man City have lost 2 out of their first 3. It is their worst Premier League start to a season since 2004. So 21 years, this is their worst start. And if they lose on Sunday, it'll be even bloody worse. I want to hear Pep out. But if we lose, we know the score. We know how it plays on. Hated, adored, never ignored. There will be a pile-on of Amorim too. So high stakes in this game for both clubs. And I think that, look, first of all, let's start off with the lineup because I want to get the preview bit done in the first few minutes. We are, of course, live. Bring it on, says Ewan. Good evening, ladies and gents, says Blaine. Lorenzo says, is this live? Yes. It's not a bloody preview, mate. I'm picking my nose. But look, looking at the team, I'm not picking my nose. I'm picking the predicted lineup. Obviously, Ben Jacobs saying this afternoon on the show that Le Mans is now seen as the number 1. He has the confidence of the manager. They're going to go with him. So what a refreshing change it is to see no Onana or Biinda there. I think this is really, really, really important. I think he will go with Yoro, De Ligt and Shaw. You want a strong centre-back setup. And as you saw in the chart show, all 3 of those have done very well so far in the seasons, especially De Ligt and Yoro. I feel if Mazraoui's back, he's got to play. And with the injury absentees of Mount and Cunha now confirmed, would you go Ahmad right wing back and leave Delo and Mazraoui on the bench? I personally think for a bit of added protection, Mazraoui's good defensively and I think he's better going forward than Delo. So I think Mazraoui plays right wing back. Dorgu gives you left wing back. I think he'll play Bruno and Casemiro in the midfield. I just can't see Agate or Mainu starting. But that gives you a chance to give Mount and Mbeumo the number 10 slots behind Sesko, who surely has to start. Now, major update from Ben Jacobs this afternoon. And I've got to say, it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. Now, I spoke to you about middle of last week. It was probably a little bit premature, but the information was that neither player was going to play against Manchester City. There was an outside chance of Cunha, but Mount wouldn't be playing. Obviously, that was very soon afterwards. Now, what Ben Jacobs said on the show exclusively today was that whilst the Cunha injury isn't as bad as they thought it could be, we're not away from it being what could be worse than a grade 1 tear. I.e., and I wrote it down here, he was saying it could be up to 5 weeks, which would mean he'd be out until after the next international break. Now, I think that is... I'm still, based on what we were told last week, hoping that that hasn't progressed into that. But you know what? It's looking like a few weeks for that. With Mason Mount, all Ben Jacobs says was a few weeks with that one. So it's not as good news as maybe we were hoping for after the Burnley game where Mount was took off precautionary and... Obviously, we knew Cunha had done something to his hamstring, but he was walking out okay. And the belief last week was that it wasn't as bad as first thought. That might be because they thought it was something really bad that was going to keep him out for 3 months, like Delap, and it's not going to be that much. But it's still a very big blow for Manchester United. And just to focus on that, if we do miss Mount and Cunha for a month, it's a very big month, isn't it? And it's 2 of our best number 10s in the season so far. So, you know, this is what I'm talking about. Injury FC. We spoke about it on the US tour when we didn't have Xerxes and we didn't have Mazraoui. There always seems to be 2 major players out for Manchester United, and these 2 are going to be a big miss for a very big game. But it is an opportunity. By default, Sesko surely comes into the team. Ahmad gets to go back to a position where I think he probably looks more comfortable. And you could play Bruno there, or you could play Xerxes. So we can't cry into spilt milk, really. You know, you are going to get injuries. And if we're going to get injuries, the one place in the team where we are so stacked is number 10. So yes, we've lost our 2 best number 10s so far in the season, but Mbeumo's not been far behind them and he's looking fitter. Ahmad can play that role and Xerxes can play it as well, and so can Bruno. So look, I'm not happy about the injuries, but it is in an area of the pitch where we actually do have options. And I think, as Ben Jacobs was saying this afternoon, it almost forces you to put Sesko up front. You have to play him. Carhu says, why is Casemiro starting? That's my predicted lineup, mate. Personally, the change I would make would be to probably drop Ahmad, play Bruno as a 10, and put Mainu in next to Casemiro. That's probably what I would do, because it just gives you more midfield coverage with Bruno running all over the place and Mainu as a proper 8. So I would actually put Ahmad to the bench to use later on in the game, move Bruno further forward and put Mainu in. That's the only change I would make. JS says, drop Ahmad. It's the Manchester derby at the Etihad, mate. And I just think having something off the bench that's a bit explosive would help us. Because if we don't, you're looking at what's coming off the bench attacking-wise. Xerxes. That's it. So I would be keeping my powder dry a little bit. With regards to the game itself, I'm going to go for a score draw, which would be a good result for us in the circumstances. There is a vulnerability to Manchester City. I've watched 2 of their games this season. I didn't watch the Wolves game, but I watched the Brighton one and I watched the Spurs one. There is a vulnerability to them, especially in the second half. I think if you stop them scoring in the first half an hour, where they tend to look quite good, they fade in the last hour of the game. So we've got to be in the game in the first half an hour, and we've also got to offer something on the counter. I think we can do that. I think Brian Mbeumo is key in a game like this. Our defence needs to be strong. But you can hurt Man City's defence. There's no 2 ways about it. You can hurt them defensively. John Stones won't be fit. We know that Mamouche isn't going to be fit. Their midfield isn't what it was. I'm not saying our midfield is, but I think you get out of this game what you put into it. And what I mean by that is, if we go into it and we're like, oh, it's Pep, it's Man City, let's give them the ball, we're probably going to get beat. If we go into it and go, it's a Manchester derby, we're Manchester United, let's have it, I think we get something out of the game. I think if we go into it with the belief that we can win the game, we will get something out of it. If we go into it and we're reserved, there's no need to be reserved. They've lost 2 games of their first 3. They are under pressure. It's a pressure game for them to come out and perform, and they're going to try and do it. They're going to come at us aggressively. They're going to go on the front foot. We need to match that and come at us then. You're not the Man City of 3 or 4 years ago. You've got loads of new players. You don't know what you're doing. Let's have it. And I think we can build it. And I completely agree with RJ. I think this game is built for Mbeumo. So I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw in relation to the game. Now, interestingly, I do want to delve into some of the stuff that Ben Jacobs said, but I think one of the most explosive things he said this afternoon was that Sesko was not Amorim's choice. Amorim preferred Watkins. Favel pushed for Sesko. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Because I've been looking forward to discussing this all day. Watch it back. There is more context than that, but ultimately it comes down to that Amorim favoured Watkins over Sesko, but Favel pushed for Sesko, and they all agreed on that. What are your thoughts on that? Because I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Because if we had a board like that, when this summer they got rid of De Gea and brought Onana in, we'd still have De Gea in goal. So I'm very glad that Amorim doesn't have a complete veto when there are other educated voices in the room. People like Jason Wilcox knows football, Favel knows football, and obviously Amorim knows football, but there has to be debate. There has to be conversation. There cannot just be, I want this, I want this, I want this. That hasn't worked for United. The manager, I think, should be listened to, very much so, and he shouldn't have players forced upon him. And the story would be that obviously I think Amorim favoured Watkins, and then in the room they couldn't agree and they came to an agreement, let's go for Sesko, which is absolutely fine. But Amorim favouring Watkins is interesting. I would also add into this, before I get your comments on it, this is not unhealthy. It's not unhealthy to have these types of debates. You do not want a board where everyone's just holding hands and getting on. You want... This is Manchester United on its arse, trying to find its way back. I would expect conversation and debate in the boardroom, and I would applaud it. But for anybody out there that thinks, oh, no, Amorim wanted Sesko, well, he didn't. He clearly didn't. And the evidence was already there anyway, because we went for Delap, which was Wilcox's choice. Then we went for Gyökeres, which was Amorim's choice. Ekitike, I've got no idea whose choice that was. Watkins, we went for Watkins twice in the summer transfer window. We went for him at the end of June, and we went for him about a few days before we went for Sesko. So Watkins was always ahead of Sesko anyway. We approached Villa twice, weeks before Sesko and days before Sesko. So I ain't got a problem with it. At the time, we debated what was better, young, unproven striker with the potential to be great, or Premier League proven striker who maybe only gives you 2 or 3 years. And let's be honest, he's not had the best start to the season anyway, has he? So yeah, Sesko hasn't started for Man United yet, but Watkins ain't burning bridges, ain't tearing walls down at Villa either. So I think in the long run, look, hopefully it's going to be the right choice. Jahin says, do you think Amorim is stubborn enough to bench Sesko because he doesn't want him? Well, I mean, very, very good point. That was the natural place to go. Is that the reason that Sesko hasn't started games? Look, obviously, when you look at Ten Hag, Anthony hadn't had a pre-season, went straight into the team, scored 3 goals in his first 3 games. Other players that Ten Hag was given didn't go straight into the team. Was that because they weren't his signings and he wasn't desperate to put them in? Maybe Amorim isn't desperate to put Sesko in because it's not his signing. On the other hand, maybe he hasn't put him in because he can see that his fitness levels aren't where they need to be. Flip it the other way, Gyökeres is not fit. Arteta puts him in straight away. Sesko's not fit. Amorim doesn't put him in straight away. Is that because we've got a different fitness department, or is that because it wasn't Amorim's priority player? I don't know. But the only way this gets solved is by swallowing that potential stubbornness, if it is that, because this is the striker you got. And trust me, mate, you could have got a lot worse. So, look, I've always said I don't necessarily know that Sesko screams out perfect striker for Amorim's system. I don't know. We have to wait and see. But this is the striker we've got, and this is the game to use him. So I think it's an interesting point. I think where we win, gut feeling, usually good. Personally, I'd put Ahmad on the bench, start Xerxes. I think he'd do well off Sesko. Come on United, says Scott Page. Evan Whelan says, you've got to listen to your scouts at some point. Well, I was talking to you about this morning, wasn't I? I think in Favel, we've got such a good finder of talent that, you want to listen to those sort of people. Now, my fear is Sesko flops, Amorim was right, Favel was wrong, and somewhere down the line you get rid of Favel. I don't want to get rid of Favel. I think his knowledge in the European game is really important to this football club, so I hope that Sesko is going to work. It's interesting, I saw a comment from Andy Cole today, something about Sesko being better than Ekitike and he's going to score loads of goals. I don't know whether it was a genuine quote. I don't know whether it was done to wind Liverpool fans up. But I was actually quite impressed because I thought, there's so many of these ex-players have got no idea about any... I mean, a lot of them don't know anything about certain players in the Premier League, let alone the Bundesliga or La Liga. So I was impressed with that. I mean, I think that, there's still a lot for me to learn about Sesko, but I certainly know that over the last few years, his reputation in the game is very, very good, and we haven't seen any of it yet. I can't wait for him to start getting half-decent chances. I mean, as Ben Jacobs said, what a game it would be to score. But I think we've got a great opportunity on Sunday. I think we go into it as slight underdogs, but I don't think we go into it as underdogs that maybe we have done in previous years. Of course, we could get turned over, handsomely. But I think we've got a great opportunity in this game. And we've got to start grabbing these opportunities. As I said, we're not in Europe. Europe starts next week for everybody else. We need to take advantage of that. We need to take advantage of the fact that we're not in Europe and all these games are cup finals. Now, it's difficult to take advantage of it on Sunday because you're away from home after the first international break. I always say after the international break, you want to be at home. There will be challenges, but we've got to face these challenges. And I hope that those players realise that every Premier League game for us is a cup final now. We have to win as many as possible. Having said that, if we did lose on Sunday, and I'm not saying it's acceptable, but remember what I said last night about Newcastle finished 5th and lost 12 games. If you were mapping out the 12 games you would find acceptable, and it's never acceptable to lose, but we will lose some. If I was mapping out the 12 games that I would say, okay, we might lose those, certainly Etihad away, Emirates away, Anfield away are going to be very high up on the list. So this is a tough game. I see a Xerxes winner. The aura will be next level. I really do hope, Rajaf, that Xerxes does hit this sort of cult hero that many of us believe he can be. I think that there is this huge season for Xerxes. And I heard what Ben Jacobs was saying about Agate and how, Amorim's really hoping he can kick on and be the player that he believes he can be. And I think that's really, I'm hopeful of that as well. But with Xerxes, obviously he missed pre-season because of the injury. He missed the end of last season because of injury. We don't want him to become injury prone. This is a really big season for him. But there is a good vibe around Xerxes in the fan base, around the club. It would be great to start seeing that come through on the pitch. Chicken says, is United going for Debast, a Sporting player? I've heard little bits, Chicken, but only in relation to Anacho as well, So I was surprised we didn't buy a Sporting player. Mojo says, if we turn up like we did against Arsenal, we're going to beat City. Yeah, well, we can do that. Nathan says, I've got the script and we win by 1. Good. Ideal opportunity to play Bruno at 10, says Stephen. Oh, for the love of God, play Bruno at 10. You know what, Stephen? You're talking my language and not just English. For the love of God, play Bruno at 10. I'm praying. I'm praying for Bruno to play at 10. That's my predicted lineup, but I'm personally praying we put Bruno at 10. I, as a fan of Bruno, have this conflict. If he's a number 8, show me the money. Sell him to Saudi. If he's a number 10, keep him for years. It's that simple with me. If Bruno's at 10, Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. If he's playing as an 8, sell him to Saudi. Get out. It's that easy. So I hope he does play as a number 10. I mean, he's never going to play as a number 10 if we don't play him as a number 10 on Sunday, really. If Mount and Cunha, our best 2 10s so far this season, are injured and then Bruno doesn't play as a 10, he ain't never playing as a 10, is he? But I hope he does. I agree with you, Stephen. Mark, we're currently watching in Tenerife. Le Mans must start. Thanks for your shout out last month, says the Green Team. Thank you, and I hope you're having a great holiday. Catch the sun the last month, really, isn't it? But look, I think that I think what Ben Jacobs said on the show, I think Fabrizio hinted at it as well. I think I'm becoming more and more confident that Le Mans will start on Sunday. I felt he'd go with Binder because Binder played against Arsenal and Fulham and Burnley. But you know what? I'd throw him in. I know there is a risk, but I'd throw him in because you're playing Man City. And if we win and he's not very busy, great start. And if we lose because we're shit and he's busy, great start. He won't get the blame. So obviously, if we lose 1-0 and he makes the mistake, that's the nightmare. But, don't play football if that, don't be a manager if that's going to be a reason not to pick players. So I am hopeful that he will start. What I will say though, and I think it's really important, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't start. And if he doesn't start, I don't want to see negativity because there is a case not to start him. But I'm starting to think that we will. Roddy says it's Le Mans, not Le Mans, and yet loads of people have told me it's Le Mans. Hello, Mark. No training videos, no milking the signing of Le Mans. Why do you think this is? I've seen nothing of him in a United training. I hope he starts as Connor. I mean, there could be a number of reasons for that. Maybe we don't want to put pressure on it. Maybe we're just, don't want to show opposition, weaknesses or strengths. I don't know. Throw him in, says Greg Don. Hope you're doing well, Greg. Can you see us nicking this? I still think it'll be a poor season, though. Oh, sorry. Mackenzie says, I can see us nicking this. I still think it'll be a poor season. Mate, if we beat Man City or we draw against Man City on Sunday, let's get real. Like, we could lose to Chelsea the next week or Brentford the week after that. It's going to be a roller coaster, and it's a very competitive Premier League. So, look, there'll be ups and downs, of course. Hello, Mark. So's Connor. We've done that one. David Carroll, thanks for being a member. Connor W, welcome to the Members Club. And Gems, who is a gem and one of our brilliant moderators, I apologise, she gifted 5 memberships at the start of the show. Big shout out to Gems. If I see Bruno at striker, left wing, right wing, I'll turn the TV off, says Jackal. And Inu says, Mainu and Ahmad to win us the game from the bench. Starter Agate and Casemiro. Bruno at 10, says Inu. I don't think Agate will start because did he not play for... Let me have a quick look. Uruguay results. Uruguay results. They played against Chile yesterday and he did start the game. I don't know whether he played well or not, but he played the full 90 in a 0-0 draw in the centre midfield position with Valverde and Bentancur. I mean, that's good. That is good news. I don't know whether he played well, but it's good that he was starting because he didn't start the previous game. So good to see that. Brian Dale says, just play Agate and push Bruno to 10. Red Army says, Maguire must start. We need him in both boxes. And Patrick Lynch says, Amorim wanting Watkins makes sense. A Premier League proven striker that in theory could hit the ground running. Amorim is on short time to get things right. Why would he favour a long-term project when that is the situation? I think Patrick so often, like many of you, drops real intelligent points. I don't think you could put it any better than that. If you've got a problem with Amorim maybe favouring Watkins over Sesko, I think if you've got all, if you're Louis Armstrong and you've got all the time in the world, then Sesko makes sense. If you know you've got time, it makes sense. If you know you're under pressure from minute one, let me put it this way, right? You've only got an hour to make your dinner. Do you want to be baking a lasagna, which even if you do the prep quickly, you're going to bloody really be lucky to have that ready in an hour? Or do you pop down the chippy, you got something ready in 20 minutes? And I think, with Amorim, that's very much what it is. He probably quite prefers the lasagna, the natural ingredients, etc., more healthy for you. But has he got time to make and eat it? Whereas the chippy is convenient. And I think that Patrick's put it very, very well. That, Amorim is under intense pressure. Maybe that's what makes a short-term Premier League proven player more attractive. But then again, you look at it, Sesko is a long-term project. Le Mans is a long-term project as well. I think we... Scott Page, we've done that one, haven't we, as well? Linda says, my 12-year-old daughter asked if your lightsaber will be coming out this season, Mark. That sounds wrong, but let's pretend that this is it. And there it is. And I tell you what, it's good when I'm standing up. I'll tell you what, with some good music and, a proper battle, I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying that too much. I'll come back to the show. Billy, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. Anna Rudd says, I really hope we can build this season, but we really need to be clinical. The football is exciting. I'm really rooting for United to make a statement. I think you know what, Anna Rudd's statement there is cleverer than it looks. I'm not being offensive to Anna Rudd because I don't know whether he meant to be cleverer than it looks, but it is cleverer than it looks because I think when you're talking about when you talk about being clinical, last season, I think Garnacho shooting from anywhere, Rashford shooting from anywhere, sometimes Ahmad shooting from anywhere. The only part of the goal that Rasmus was hitting was the post in frustration. We were not clinical last season. You look at Mbeumo last season at Brentford, clinical. You look at Cunha at Wolves last season, clinical. You bring those two in and you hope you get clinical. Sesko, I wouldn't say Sesko's record at Leipzig was clinical, but he is a goal scorer. So look, what the hope will be this season is that we create more chances and we convert those chances. And that's a hell of a lot of what our recruitment in the summer was about. It's going to be an exciting game, but we need to play as a team. If the team we saw against Arsenal plays on Sunday, it's in the bag, says Andre. It is going to be very difficult without Cunha and Mount. If you missed the start of the show, Ben Jacobs was sort of alluding to concerns around Cunha, that it could be 4 weeks and that Mount could be weeks as well. I mean, this is just not what I was hoping when we got our update last week. I was hoping that, but I did say it last week as well. The problem is with our medical team, it's very precautionary. So, you know what? If it's a cup final at the weekend, maybe Cunha's on the bench. If it's a cup final next weekend, maybe Mount's back. But it isn't. It's the start of the season, and maybe it's like, you know what? Let's take our time. The problem with that is that you lose a couple of games, and Amorim doesn't have time. But we can't seem to solve the injury problem at Man United. And look, I'll hold my hands up. There's a lot of other injuries out there. Chelsea have picked up some injuries. Man City have picked up some injuries. Arsenal have picked up some injuries. So it's not just the Club World Cup. There are injuries. We do get them. But I just wish we weren't always carrying injuries, because we always seem to be. Thank you, Andre Gomez, as well. Thank you very much to Anarud. Right, I wanted to get into a couple other bits as well. Obviously, we heard about there's a couple of things from the Ben Jacobs interview this afternoon I wanted to talk about. I found this really interesting about Baleba. He said Carlos Baleba should be seen in a bubble, because that was about making an ambitious elite starting midfielder and trying to bring that signing forwards. But Brighton ultimately gave the club no chance. Then you had the more economical approach of, was there a name out there that maybe was a bit more short-term that could be a squad player? And in the end, I think Man United felt the right kind of profile was not available. So they were just not going to spend the money for the sake of it. So I found that really interesting as an update around the midfield in the summer, because essentially what the update is that Baleba was always a shot in the dark. It was an ambitious try to do something explosive. And Brighton said, piss off. So United did. Then they looked at maybe something a little bit more short-term and decided that they didn't want to do that. So effectively, we needed a midfielder. We tried something ambitious. We didn't want to do something short-term, and we decided to do nothing. Now, in football, I just don't think that's a good idea. I think sometimes, you know, if you can't get what you want and you don't want to spend something cheap, keeping your money in the pocket in business is a good idea. But I think that's Man United, people. I think that's Man United. If I'm running a business and I want something and I can't get it, do I go for something cheap or do I keep my money in the pocket? In business, I think you're wise to keep your money in the pocket. But in football, when you need something and you can't get the thing you want and you're looking at something that's a little bit short-term and cheap, I think you do take it because you do need it. Football is not business, is what I'm trying to say. And I think United, again, took the business approach. And some of you might agree with it. I wouldn't be surprised if you did. Because I get it. From a business point of view, keep your money in the pocket. If you can't get what you want, why take something cheap and short-termism? But I think in football, there's a problem. You have to solve that problem. And if you can't get what you want, you've got to go plan B, C, D, or E. You have to. You know, put it this way. If we'd gone for Sesko and he was too expensive, would you have been okay if we'd gone, well, we're not going to bother going for a cheaper striker, we just won't get one? Well, we need, and that's my point perfectly. It's the same with the goalkeeper. We needed a midfielder, we needed a goalkeeper, and we needed a striker. If we'd not gone any, because we wanted to keep our money in the pocket because we can't get what we want, then we would have been in big trouble. And that's why, to me, football is never the same as business. But I think we made a business decision this summer. But it was a very interesting update. Also, just on the midfield as well, this was also from Ben Jacobs. I think Adam Wharton would be higher on Manchester United's thinking than Elliot Anderson. It might be two midfielders that come in because remember, Casemiro is a bit of a question mark, even though he's back in favour with Amorim. I don't see on the midfield a January signing. I know people don't want to hear that, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion about it. And we have seen big January signings, you know. Clubs do big January signings. Enzo Fernandez was a January signing. But I don't see a January signing because I think that, you know, Elliot Anderson, I think will stay at Forest for the season. Baleba, I think will stay at Brighton for the season. And Wharton, I think will stay at Palace for the season. And I certainly think on the European scene, I would expect a lot of those players. I don't know what the situation is with Stuttgart. Stiller, maybe a possibility. I don't know what they've got going on in the European scene, and we'll have to keep an eye on how they do in the Bundesliga. But I don't think there's going to be many January opportunities. In fact, the only January opportunity I see is Conor Gallagher, which was an opportunity in the final week of the window anyway. So if we go and get Conor Gallagher in January, you would be begging the question, why the bloody hell didn't we do it, you know, at the start of the season? But I think the big midfielder will come in the summer. And I think January will either not do something or do something short term. Sid T, he's feeling hard in a fight way. He says, the big games don't scare me. It's the mid-table teams playing low blocks that we can beat. We can't beat. We got this. Well, aren't Man City classed as a mid-table team at the moment? They have lost 2 out of 3. You know, we should be beating teams like this. If we want to get top 5, we've got to be beating teams like this. Mid-table fodder. You know what? Seriously, I'm not actually taking the piss out of Man City. I ain't doing that. I heard we hired new medical staff. Is that true? This could be the reason for the hesitation, bringing them back too early, says Alex. We still have a lot of the old medical staff at the club, but there are changes afoot. Get your questions in, everybody. 8 o'clock show. I hope you're all buzzing tonight as well. I just feel like I haven't had the opportunity of doing a live preview for a long time. We've also got some really good conversation points tonight. And I feel like football, we've had such a good international break, so many good shows. But to feel that the football's back is just great. And don't forget, tomorrow night, we have got an 8 o'clock show, but also Bundesliga live on That's Football. First return of football will be on That's Football. Live coverage of Frankfurt against Leverkusen. And trust me, there are some good talents there to keep an eye on for next summer. Will United look at them? Do you think we should have loaned Palhinha or Douglas Luiz, says Evan. I think it's a great comment. You know, I don't know about Douglas Luiz. We'll have to see how he does at Forest. But certainly Palhinha looked brilliant for Spurs against Man City a couple of weeks ago at the Etihad. And obviously Amorim would know him from Sporting. I think there was a crossover. In fact, I'm certain there was. I don't know why we didn't look at that. I don't know why we didn't look at that. You know, that's my whole point again. You know, there's no value in the market. Well, there bloody was. There was numerous value in the market. John United says, 2 weeks wasted on that deal. Plenty of time to pivot. Total lack of preparation. And now they spin it as we'll sign him next summer. Football doesn't wait, says John. And also, you know what? You know what? You make a great point, John, because if we do sign Baleba next summer, everyone will get really excited. If he flops, it's not just the point that he flops from the start. It's the fact that you wasted 2 years trying to buy a flop. My point being, Jadon Sancho. We were all over Sancho for one summer. We didn't get him. We waited till the next year, and then he fucking flopped anyway. And that's my point. I don't think football does wait. Like John says, football doesn't wait. You either do a deal or you don't do a deal. You don't kick it down the road for 12 months because not every signing is guaranteed either to be a success. Thank you very much, Anna Rudd. As to January, what about Kamara from Monaco, Mark? As I said before, there is a midfielder I would keep an eye on from Italy, Kone. I'd keep an eye on that one. What happened with Musa as well? I'm not saying that's one to keep an eye on for us, but did he end up signing for... did he come to the Prem? Yunus Musa. No, he stayed at... there was talk of him coming to the Premier League at one point. No, he's still at Milan, I think. No, he went to Atalanta. There we go. Major Dirt, thank you very much for your super chat. Appreciate that. There was something else I wanted to... Oh, just very quickly. Just very, very quickly on this. More Onana stuff. Ben Jacobs. Those close to Onana were saying 2 weeks before the window shut that he was going to stay. And Man United sources were saying that any goalkeeper that came in would not affect Onana now. I think in the end it was Onana that drove his own opportunity and move. So Man United would have been content just to keep Onana. You know what? It's just a pleasure to know that I don't have to put Onana there on every preview for the rest of the season. Look, I don't actually know what the last few twists and turns of the transfer window were with the goalkeeper. Clearly I don't, because I thought we were going for Martinez with 24 hours to go, like many people did. And we ended up going with the goalkeeper that we could have got a month before. But what I do know, and I think everybody would agree, as per what we said in the March international break, Wilcox and Amorim wanted to replace Onana. Now, Amorim wanted Watkins, he didn't get him. Who did Wilcox want? Did Wilcox want Watkins or did Wilcox want Sesko? I think Wilcox might have gone for Watkins because he understands the English. I don't know. But my point is, just because Amorim and Wilcox wanted Onana out doesn't mean he was going to go anywhere if Barada and co can't sell him. So, look, I think Onana had the power, definitely. I think he knew that he wasn't wanted, but I think he played the game of Thrones. He thought he could sit on that throne and not be removed. And as anybody knows, there might be a Jamie Lannister there who can remove you, the Kingslayer. So Onana was in a strong position because he knew United couldn't afford to replace him if he wouldn't go. And I think he sat there and went, you're not going to replace me. But then he came up against the manager, of which we haven't had before, who went, I might not be able to replace you, but it doesn't mean I have to pick you. And as soon as Binder started against Arsenal, Onana realised, I better go. He did a Will Young. I think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now. What I to say? Anyway, leave it there. But yeah, I think it was time for him to go. And but yeah, I wouldn't disagree that I think United were preparing to keep him because it was another example of a player having the power to say, I'm not going to go. Hi, Mark. Could you give a shout out to our mate Pricey and call him a creep? Cheers, says Major Dirt. There you go, Pricey. Apparently you're a creep. Mazrawawi says, are you mad at me, Mark? I never get a shout out. Haven't heard from you in ages, mate. You can have a shout out. There you go. Gabe says, as an American, trust me, you don't want Musa. I had high hopes for him, you know. I remember having him on my career mode. Just as a shout out, by the way, there is going to be a Man United career mode for FC 26. I was umming and ahhing about whether I was going to do one this year. I definitely am going to do one. We've been doing some stuff with EA anyway, so that's a reason to do it. But also, with the Bundesliga thing and Man United being shit, this is probably the most excited I've been about a career mode in years. Because whenever you play as Man United on FC 26 or previous incarnations of it, you're always expected to be in the top four, even though you know the team's not good enough. But this year, it's the first year where if you get in the top four, you're basically going to get a 5-star rating and a statue. So I'm really excited about that because I think we literally are the underdogs for top four, which will make it interesting. And also, with my Bundesliga knowledge, I think there's going to be some very interesting signings. I know Onana's brother. Apparently, Onana spent 7 years in grade 1, says Parker. I don't know what that means. We're going to beat Man City on Sunday. Onana's gone as well, says Anakesh. It's just great to have football back, isn't it? It really is. It's great to have football back. Right, let me just double check that there's nothing else I wanted to bring in, and then I'm going to get into the live chat. I've done that one, haven't I? Done that one. Yeah, the injury stuff's disappointing. Man United are hoping that Manuel Ugarte can really make a statement. He's liked by Amorim. The club are also seeing how Mainu responds. Look, I really... We can talk and talk and talk about the midfield, and I think the club dropped the ball. I think they would admit that privately. They did. I think we all know it. But the window is shut, and I'm a firm believer in you get on with what you go. You do what you do, and you get on with what you've got. In relation to that, I just feel that we do have a dream midfield of Ugarte and Mainu. And neither of them are at the level they need to be. But you can talk about Wharton and you can talk about Baleba, but if Ugarte was the player we thought he was going to buy and Mainu was the talent we think he is, we'd actually have a really good midfield too. And I know there is always this craving for a shiny new toy, but it ain't my craving. You know, I get it, but I'm not actually that motivated by it. If Mainu could play to his talent and Ugarte could play to his potential, we would have a midfield too that would be absolutely perfectly balanced. Like they would really, at what I perceive to be their peak, Ugarte and Mainu would work really, really well. The problem is neither of them have done that yet, and they may never do that. But it is an outlier to say, you know what, it could happen. Percentage chance of them both going up that level, probably less than 30%, but it could happen. They've got to believe it can happen because, trust me, Casemiro and Bruno don't hold a torch to the potential of Ugarte and Mainu if they hit the potential. And that could solve a lot of problems for us because regardless of what happens next summer, I think we need to buy two midfielders. But if Bruno goes and Casemiro goes and you've already got Mainu and Ugarte performing well and then you bring another two in, you've got a very good midfield four there. So I am hoping, regardless of what we're looking to do in the transfer window, that Mainu and Ugarte do well. And if you don't want them to do well, I would point my attention to this latest injury curse around Mount and Cunha, who could be out for a month each. What happens when that hits the midfield? Because that midfield's only got 4 options, you know? Grade 1 equals nursery school marks, says Parker. Okay, thank you very much. Coolio Boy says, how are you, Mark? Not too bad. Not too bad. I'll tell you something in the after show. Mark, watch the new Football Manager 26 trailers, says Liam. Can't you just tell me what I need to watch? Thank you very much for that. Barad says, fix your streams. Tell me what to fix, mate. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, is there? Peter says, wait 1 more year and a half and watch JJ Gabriel, first player at that age, destroy everybody. Look, you know what? You've got that Rio at Liverpool. You've got Dalman at Arsenal. We all know about JJ at Man United. We all know that there's a huge amount of clubs looking to snatch him. There's a big reason for that. We could have our own prodigy there. I hope so. I hope so. Tyrone says, with Mount, currently no ROI. Is that return on investment? Cannot believe Cunha and Mount might be out for a while, says TT. I've got to say, when I saw it this afternoon, I was like, what's going on? You know, you know what? All I'm going to say about those injuries is let's just wait and see, because I don't think now is the time to start losing it. But if Mount's out for a month, we can't carry on with this. You know, we can't. I know it's not fair on him, but with Manchester United, we can't keep seeing glimpses of a good player that disappears every now and then. You know? It's like being at the pantomime with a really good actor who's got the shits. They come on stage for a little bit, they do really well, and then they go, it's behind you, and you know, they're off again. So we can't have this. I mean, we just can't. I remember saying it about Phil Jones for years. When he's fit, he's okay. But he ain't bloody prime Bobby Moore. You can't keep any player at your football club who can only play 20% of your season. You just can't. Doesn't matter who it is. In fact, it's worse the better they are. Imagine if you had like prime Mo Salah in a Man United shirt, but he could only play 20% of the games. it would get to a point you'd be like, he's always fucking injured. What's the point? I'd rather have Anthony Gordon, you know, who can play 90% of the games. There's just no point in having players that can't play games. And I reserve judgment, but if Mount's out for a long period of time again, then there is obviously going to be a lot of discussion about it. And I still, to this day, say, how did we not pick these problems up in the medical? I would love to know, and we never get access because it's medical records, quite rightly, but I would love to know what Pratt didn't pick all this up in the injuries, because so many Chelsea fans have said to me, he had problems the final year before you bought him. That was the problem. That was why some Chelsea fans were comfortable with him going, because he wasn't the same player anymore. He kept getting injured. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but, you know, as Melp says, Chelsea knew what they were doing with Mount. Let me have a quick look at Mount's injury record here, actually. We got time. We're Louis Armstrong. We have all the time in the world. If that's all you want, you will find we need nothing more. Okay, so what year did we sign Mason Mount? It's 2025. We signed him in 2023, didn't we? Summer 2023. So, summer 2023. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Look at this. Look at this. We signed him in summer 2023. In February 2023. So 3 months before we bought him, February 2023, he's out for a month with a pelvic contusion. And then April to May, the month before we bought him, he's out with a pelvic injury for 37 days. So if my maths are correct, and we bought him in 2023, he had 2 separate pelvic injuries in the 3 months before we bought him. That's wild, because I'll tell you now, what I told you back in March was that Mount has an underlying issue that they were talking about. I think it was about a month after we said that, they were talking about him having an operation that would keep him out for 6 months. He has an underlying issue that's causing a lot of problems. And I'm pretty sure that underlying issue is pelvic. If that's true, and look, we might be putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 here, but if that underlying issue that Mount now has is pelvic, he literally had 2 pelvic injuries in the 3 months before we bought him. And remember, he had 1 year left on his contract and we gave them £55 million. And we gave him the number 7 shirt. And we gave him 250 grand a week. I mean, the guy may well have an underlying issue that was clearly there in the 3 months before we bought him. He had 1 year left on his contract and we gave them £55 million and him 250 grand a week. I mean, what moron was involved in this deal? Like, what idiot did that deal? I mean, is it another Ten Hag veto? I don't know. I don't know. Ten Hag had a veto. He got an honour in the same summer. Did he have something in on that? I don't know, because that is wild. Absolutely wild. I feel sorry for Mount. I really do. But ultimately, we shouldn't have gone anywhere near this deal. We shouldn't have gone anywhere near it unless there's an explanation. He's a liability. It was a Todd Bowley masterclass. Look, fair play to Chelsea, but, mate, just from a quick Google search, I'd be saying, scrutinise that medical. Well, there's something... We've done the medical on him, right? There is something wrong with his pelvic, but we're not thinking it's that important. It's not important. He's just missed 2 months of the last 3 with 2 separate injuries because of it. I think it might be very important. Hello, Todd Bowley. We'll take him off your hands, but with 1 year left on his contract and a major issue around his pelvic, we'll give you 20 million. No, we want 55. Okay, bye. I mean, we've just been absolutely scammed, haven't we? The price we paid, the injury history, madness. Absolute madness. What annoys me is there's no competition for winning titles at Man United, but there's loads of competition for what's our worst ever transfer deal. There's so many. Some journalist should write a book You could do a few pages on each one, and you would actually make a trilogy out of it. And a sequel to that. What's your opinion on Kone from Roma, says Scott? My opinion is keep an eye on him. I think he could be a player that Man United take a look at. He's only 24. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was a player that Man United might look at. But, you know, there's a lot of options in the midfield this year. How come you never wear a Man United kit, says Zeffy? I literally got one behind me. Literally wore it about 3 weeks ago. And have worn loads over the years. I would say if you're actually asking a genuine question instead of being a rage baiter, the main reason I don't really wear Man United kits is because I'm well into my 40s and I just don't really feel that comfortable wearing them. As much as I would like to, I just don't feel that comfortable wearing them anymore. I think you get to a certain age. MB says, I'm addicted to this channel at this point. I don't condone addiction, but you're very welcome in the community. It's an addictive community. In fact, I was having a chat with somebody today about something we're going to be doing next month, and talk about community. It's brilliant. Can't wait. Can't wait. Fingers crossed we'll get it done, but really excited about it. Roy says, why would you have sympathy for Mount? He knew of his injury issue. Because I think if you've ever played the game, like if you've ever played the game and you've ever had an injury, you know, I did it a few times. Finals coming up on a Saturday. You've really hurt your knee. You're training. The manager says, look, it's a big game. Are you going to be all right for the final? Do you say no? Bollocks. I say yes. If you're Mason Mount and you know you've got a bit of a problem and you've got the opportunity to go and play for Man United, do you put your hand up and say, I think I've got a bit of a problem? Or do you just leave it and then you go through the medical and you get through it, and do you just leave it? Of course you bloody leave it. Come on. And, you know, we all hope that we're going to get paid. I mean, you don't know what he's been told. I don't know what's... we're just speculating anyway, but what if United knew about it and said, we're confident we can solve the problem? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Anyway, what a show. Absolutely loved it tonight. Hope you're all doing very well. And you still look young and fresh, says Zeffy. Thank you very much. I tell you what, though. As a man in my mid-40s, I just had a blood test a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to disclose my medical issue now. And I was like, I don't know why. I always thought, because you have all these like levels on your blood. That's why they do it. And fair play. I mean, look, the NHS in the UK gets a bad rap. But, you know, they did call me in to do this like Wellmen thing. I mean, you do feel a bit old doing it because I'm in my mid-40s. But I was a bit reticent to do it. Well, I wasn't, because you're better off knowing. But I was like, you know, I do have a bit of a sweet tooth. My circulation in the winter is not what it was. You know, if I'm going to watch football, I have to have these. I've got them here. They're. I need to get some better ones actually, but they're hand warmers because it's called Raynaud's disease or something. I used to get it when I was a kid. The blood just goes out your fingers, so I use them. So I was looking at it, and I know that like diabetes and stuff can be circulatory as well. So I was very much expecting it to come back and say you're borderline pre-diabetic and stuff. That was absolutely fine. So that was the buzz. But then they said to me, you're slightly above the level for high cholesterol. So I haven't got high cholesterol. It's not dangerous, but it's slightly above it, which has disappointed me a little bit because, you know, you don't want a bit of feedback. So I think there might be some content coming around some diet and fitness. I mean, I'm waiting for my kitchen. I mean, that's ruined it. I rang the doctor up and said, you know what, you've ruined it. You've said I've got slightly high cholesterol. Guess what I was going to do in my new kitchen? I was going to bake a fucking cake. What cake can I make now? Can I make a carrot cake? And he said, no, it's still got a lot of fat in it. Well, why is it called a fucking carrot cake then? Why has it got vegetables in it if it's bad for you? You've ruined that. Cooking, I've spent thousands on that fucking kitchen. Cooking with Goldbridge. I was going to make a cake. I was going to make a curry. I was going to make burgers. About all them are bad for me, aren't they? Yeah. I'll tell you what, doctor, what would you say I do with an expensive kitchen that I was going to use for cooking with Goldbridge and you've just told me I've got high cholesterol? What should I do? A salad. You know what? You don't win friends with salad. Fuck off. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do now. But it's not like everything else is fine, and it's not like it's like dangerous. I've just got to, it's a warning, you know? So I've got to start, I mean, I do eat quite healthy anyway. I think I've just got to do a little bit more exercise. Yeah. Yeah, I've just got to start doing a little bit more. You're going to do nothing, says Mike. Mate, you don't know me very well. When I put my mind to something, I will do it. I will do it. I don't, you know what, D? I don't even have eggs that much. You tell you what, I need to do some research because they tell you one thing, they tell you another. I read somewhere that, oh, I know what it was. I used to have this, I did this thing called Zoe for a year. Not a woman. I'm not having an affair. It's an app for your diet. And I used to have a bowl of porridge and a banana every morning. And then I did this Zoe test, and it tells you what foods are good for you and bad for you. And it just messes everything up because the stuff that's good for you is probably going to give me high cholesterol. And the stuff that will lower my cholesterol is apparently bad for me. So porridge and oats is actually quite good for lowering cholesterol. But on the Zoe thing, it doesn't agree with me that much. And then when I put this like spread on my toast in the morning, it scores really high, but it's probably not good for your cholesterol. And this is the problem. You're told to do one thing and you're told to do another thing. And then, you know, you end up like all over the shop. So it says eat a load of nuts. I eat a load of nuts and then I can't get my arse clean because it's got oils in it that just, you know, you're wiping for fucking an hour. So I don't look. I've got to do something, but you're told to do this, you're told to do that, and then you end up with this. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Mark, you look like my dad, and he's 30, says Zeffy. Thank you. Too much information. Hey, if you know, you know. I dream of the phantom wipe. Oh, I just love it. But, yeah, so, yeah, I've got to start doing a little bit more. To be honest, the thing is, though, it couldn't have come at a worse time because about 2 months ago, I was doing really, really well. Like, I was doing really well. I've got my whoop. I was smashing it out the park. My heart rate, my resting heart rate was down at like 39, which is ridiculous. I actually went and had an ECG and they were like, I think we need to get you into hospital. And then the doctor looked at my records and went, no, he's always had quite a low heart rate anyway. And I was doing a lot of exercise, and then I did that injury there. And I couldn't do any exercise. So, I don't know. Yeah. My resting heart rate has always been about 42. I do have quite a low resting heart rate. If I don't do any exercise, it will go up to about 46. But if I'm doing exercise, it will go down to 39. Yeah. But like I said, 3 months ago, I was doing probably 6 hard cardio sessions a week. So, yeah. Exercise is the key. Vegetables, fruits, workout, water, and fresh air will help. This is what I mean, Fabian. I'm ready for it now. Do you walk regularly? I'm glad I've got my glasses on and saw that because I was about to say yes, and then you said walk. I don't walk as much as I'd like to, but I'll get on it. I think sometimes these things are a good thing for you, and you know, sometimes it can be hereditary as well. You know, you could be diabetic. You could. I knew somebody who had very high cholesterol in their 20s. So, you know, some people have ridiculously high heart rates and blood pressure and stuff like that. So, yeah. Get a treadmill for your watch-alongs. I have thought about that, but I actually have got one. And I tested it about 6 months ago, and I just think it looks absolutely stupid. I'd find it really distracting to watch somebody going like that. So, yeah, I won't be putting you through that. But we started the stand-up desk. We started with the stand-up desk. I wanted to bring it back tonight. Remember what happened on the treadmill years ago? I mean, those were the days, Lee. I actually rented a treadmill and had it in my conservatory for about 3 months just to do that challenge. Those were the days. Those were the days. In 2016, I remember scrolling on YouTube looking for United highlights and came up with a suggestion. And I can only smile seeing you successful, says Chance. Thank you very much for being a member for 29 months, mate. Appreciate it. 10 out of 10 for the show, says Alvin. I've really loved it. Lynn says Anderson is doing really well and is a really good all-round midfielder. There we go. Dan says it's so distracting to see someone on a Teams call on a bloody treadmill. Mate, like, true story, right? Well, I didn't do it, but I did put it in the group chat. I was doing a Zoom call about 6 months ago, and somebody had one of these treadmills, right? And it's the the person who was doing it, the life and soul of the party. I've mentioned these people before. The people who describe themselves as the life and soul of the party and don't realise everyone thinks they're a knobhead. So the life and soul, Mr. Life and Soul of the party, I'll call it, right? We're on this meeting about 6 months ago. You step in, straight away I spotted it. And they're going like this. Now, I'm stood up at the moment, but I'm going side to side. I do that on my chair. These people are like this. And they think, oh, I'm multitasking. Look at me multitasking. I'm working whilst working out. What they don't realise is this is massively irritating. Certainly to me anyway. So I was just like trying to look anywhere than there because it was winding me up even more, right? And then it's almost as annoying as being on a Zoom call with somebody and their camera's there and their computer's there and you can see that they're not looking at the camera and they're also typing whilst you're fucking talking. What are you typing while I'm talking? Why are you doing that? Well, you know, so I put it in the group chat afterwards. I said, I genuinely think that we should stop anybody using treadmills on meetings in the future because it's massively irritating. And if they're going to do it, they should turn their camera off. And it went off a little bit, but ultimately I won. It was basically banned. It was just really irritating. Really, really irritating. Which reminds me, actually, I was a little bit late for the morning show this morning, funnily enough. I wasn't speeding. I've had enough bloody speeding courses for that stuff. Actually, I've had 2. And there's a roundabout about halfway back. And I got to the roundabout and there was this little bloody, well, he wasn't little, to be honest. He looked like he could do with the treadmill. He was on like a moped. It wasn't a motorbike, it was a moped. He'd got to the roundabout before me and was obviously about ready to go. And I pulled up to the roundabout. And obviously he's there, I'm here, so he's got to give way to the right. I pulled up to the roundabout, stopped, saw nothing was coming my way, so I went. And he was gonna go, but was too snooze you lose. As I went past, he's going like this. And I looked in my mirror, he's still doing it as he starts off going, and I thought, this is what's wrong with society today. You're in the wrong, mate. I turn up at the roundabout, you're too slow to go, I've got right away, I've gone, it ain't my fault, you're too fucking slow. But he's there giving it this, effing and jeffing, and I thought, mate, you're totally... People like that are a waste of space. People who moan at people when they're in the wrong. You're in the bloody wrong. It happened to me it was last weekend, driving back from Southampton. Right? I'm driving along and this car undercuts and pulls in front of me and pips me. Because we nearly hit each other. And I'm like, you've just broken the fucking law, mate. What are you pipping me for? Yeah, world's gone wrong. It has. He's there on his bloody little moped as I go past going, like bloody Darth Vader with a cold. And then I look back laughing, and he couldn't see me laughing. And he's still there going, "Rrr." I half wanted him to like lose control and fall over. That would have just made it even better. But properly getting his blood pressure up, boiling. And he's in the wrong. You're in the wrong, mate. I don't know what he wants. I think what he wanted me to do is, break the laws of the road myself and go, you can go. Bollocks. Not happening. Aman, welcome to Members Club. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Imagine if he's watching the show. Well, you're in the wrong, mate. Buy me a pint. You're in the wrong. You're Ronnie Pickering. I'm Ronnie Pickering. There's a new rule in the UK, actually, that I don't necessarily agree with it, but basically, when you are turning into a junction, if a pedestrian is, I think if they're waiting, but certainly if they've started crossing the road, no, it must be when they're waiting. You've got to give them right away. Nobody does it, but yeah, you have to give them right away. And that's another one as well. Sometimes roads are quite wide, right? So I'm crossing the road, a car's waiting to come into the junction, they can see I'm crossing the road, but they'll still impatiently make the turn, and then they'll have to wait for me to cross. And you look at them and they're going, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I've got the right of the road. Just walking across it, mate. Calm down. I've seen people punch one another. I've got to be honest, I used to be quite like an aggressive driver. Because let's be honest, people can say, oh yeah, you're a streak of piss. You're probably right. But in the safety of your car, you're bloody Mike Tyson. And especially if you've got an audience. Ooh, look at this fucking idiot. Look at him. They're fucking driving Miss Daisy. Look at this fucking idiot. Brr, brr, brr. Idiot. Look at this idiot. Look at this C-U-N-T. Oh, God, look at this wanker. You're a king in a castle that can't be impenetrated. And I used to be a little bit like that. But I'd say over the last 2 years, I just don't let it bother me. And life's a lot better. It's almost like this morning, I got to the traffic lights and they changed. And I was on the left lane, and then this car pulled up on the right lane. And I could see them edging forward. And I thought, you know what? I thought we could go for it. Let's go for it. Because it was basically one of those 2 lanes at the lights where it's going to filter into one. And I could tell they were nudging. And I thought to myself, you know what? 3 or 4 years ago, I'm doing this. And I'll back myself to do it. I'm holding it on the clutch, I'm revving, and we're away. And it's really going to come down to what's the quicker car. Because if he's on his clutch or she's on her clutch as well, it's going to come down to what's the quicker car over the first, few seconds. But what I did today is I acted like I was going to do it, and then they flew off, and I just went casually off. And I sort of smiled to myself because I thought, you know what? What does it mean? There's always another traffic light. There's always another race, isn't there? And for what? Blood pressure. It's not worth it. It really isn't. But, I would have done. And also, I've been in that position before where you're going, fucking wanker, this, that, and the other. And someone gets out the car, and not only could they beat the shit out of you, they could beat the shit out of your car. And then you realise there's always a bigger dog. There's always a bigger fish. And sometimes you might just piss off the wrong person. So I just don't. I think the world's a very frustrated place. And I really am of the opinion now that, you'll know, and I'm sure many of you like it. I'm very opinionated on certain things, but I don't have to have an opinion on everything. I really don't. And it's like when everyone was talking about that unfortunate person who got shot in America yesterday. Horrific. But as I said this morning, I have my beliefs, but I don't do them on here. We are a football community, and when bad things happen in the world, I like to think are a compassionate community, but I don't do politics. It's an argument I don't need to be in. They're personal to me, and I would not expect to inflict them on you. So if I'm down the pub with some mates and we're talking about it, I might talk about it, but I'm never going to do it in this environment because it's not right. It's not fair. You may have very different views to me, and people get very, very, very aggressive about it. And ultimately, what happened in America yesterday was because of that. And I just don't. My stance on it, it's horrific. And there are people out there who have very, very bad thoughts and feelings towards us in the West. But I wouldn't want them to be shot and assassinated in front of their family. I wouldn't. So, you know, I just think sometimes you don't have to have an opinion on everything. And I'm definitely getting older. I was an angry young man in my 20s, definitely. But I just think, you know, you pick your fights now, don't you? Because there are things that you do need to fight for. But I don't need to fight for everything. Anyway, I'm going to have a bath and plan out how I'm going to lower my cholesterol. And also, bloody redo my plans for going for... I'll still make the cake. I don't have to eat it. The kids can have it. Devastated. My comeback for cooking with Goldbridge was a bloody cake. And also Halloween's coming up. And Christmas. That's basically cholesterol on toast. Anyway, look, all of you stay safe. Take care. Absolute legends as usual. Don't forget, tomorrow I'm on the 10 o'clock show. We've got the press conference. I think Beth's doing that. Amorim. Tomorrow night we've got an 8 o'clock show. We've also got Bundesliga. I think Terry's on the 8 o'clock show tomorrow night. I didn't want to do the 8 o'clock show at 6 o'clock and then Bundesliga. I thought, you know, let's keep the 8 o'clock show slot where it is. And if you want to join me for Bundesliga, I'll be live on That's Football for that. If City loses this, will the media say Pep out? I will, DV. I've got a video ready on That's Football. It's scheduled. It won't go live unless they lose, but basically it starts off like this. Man City in crisis and Pep's got to go. Pep has to go. He's the worst manager since Peter Reid. He's rubbish. He's crap. He's overrated. Get him out. Get him out tonight. Loses 3 games from 4 with all that money. What a joke. What a joke. What a joke. I'd rather have Anton Deck in charge. Get out. Saturday takeaway, even on a Sunday. But look, I think it'll be a draw. Take care, everyone. Speak to you in a bit.